My name is Ray Swirsky, and I am a artist. I'm an oil painter, and I can give you a bit of background of my history. I'm a recent artist. Only started painting full time about 3 years ago in 2017. But my interest in art actually happened when I was about 18 years old, and I moved from a small town in British Columbia, Kimberley, and came to Calgary to go to college. And when I first arrived in Calgary, one thing I stumbled upon was these art galleries that were small art galleries that were tucked in most of the malls around the city. In the back of those malls, in the back of these little galleries, there was original oil paintings. And the first time I ever saw one, I was just fascinated by oil paintings. And I couldn't walk by a gallery without spending at least 5 minutes or 10 minutes dipping into the back and looking at the oil paintings. So something stirred me back then, and I was only 18, 19 years old. Over the years, I knew that one day I'd wanted to be an oil painter, and never knew how, never took art classes, no formal education in it, but it was a passion that somewhere inside of me, it stirred up. At one point, I did take books out of the library when I was probably about 22 to try and paint, and it went okay. I tried to do a few paintings just on my own, and the first ones were terrible, but it stirred something in me saying, one day I'm going to be a painter, one day. And over the years, got married, had children. I was an electronic engineering technologist, so my background is very technical. I used to take apart banking machines of all sorts that counted coin currency. Even ones I hadn't seen or been trained on, I could take apart and troubleshoot and repair these. So very technically minded. That's sort of my background there. But never lost that interest in oil paints. I used to visit the exhibitions around town, off and on, always the Calgary Stampede big art show down there. That was a place I always went to every year to study the art. And over the years, I built 2 acreages where I raised my family. And even then, when I built the acreages, I had a plot of land where one day I said, I'm going to build an art studio. But I never did. And years went by, and it was always there. One day I'm going to be a painter. But what happened was life goes on, things change. My kids grew up. My wife and that I had my children with, we separated. I met somebody new who I'm now married with, and we ended up meeting a number of new friends that we started going out together, meeting at different people's homes. And my fortune was that when we went to one of these couples' homes, I had no idea, but she was an artist, a good artist, with an art studio in her home that was just, it was a very grand studio with vaulted ceilings and beams and windows and huge easels and huge pieces of artwork. And that was it for me. I mean, that day, everything changed because we got into talking, and she had me enrolled in art classes in Calgary the following Wednesday. And that is where it really started, because I started taking lessons once a week with a local Calgary art teacher, Michael Downs, who is a incredibly instructor and taught the fundamentals of art the way that I really understand them. And so a good teacher for me, and teaching the fundamentals, I grasped them quite easily and quickly. I think that's because of my technical background, and sort of ran with that. That was where it all began. And after 3 years of taking lessons once a week with him, things changed again when the company I worked for did some restructuring, and they packaged my position out. So at that time I went, I'm just going to try and paint full time. And it was a really good move, because I treated it like a job, worked really hard every day from when I woke up at 6 in the morning till evening, and studied art, worked on art, and everything else that goes with it, but very dedicated and committed to getting to where I am today.
I am looking at the art behind you, and you have a lot of urban art.
I do, and if you look at my catalog of work that I have, you'll see it on my website. You will see a number of different things on there. Landscapes, of course, are one of the things that most artists start out doing. They're familiar, they're local, they have an appeal, they're easy to find, and an abundance of material. So that's where I started, was with landscapes of the mountain scenes, lakes around in the area. As I grew up, other elements of material always caught my interest. I saw a photo of a water bomber over a forest fire. Some of you may have seen that painting that I did about 3-4 years ago, and it was just because of the light in this thing. I said, I want to paint this thing. So when I see something has dramatic lighting, dramatic effect, it stirs something inside me. So I want to learn to paint this. And that's what it is. It's a learning process. So I don't restrict myself just to landscapes or, portraits or anything. When I see something I like or that interests me, I learn how to paint that. Using the fundamental skills, and if I get stuck along the way, I jump on on my laptop, and I Google other artists. I study their stuff. I study how they created light, how they captured the depth and that. So it's always a learning process for me. In the back behind me, you'll see some landscape, some street scenes. I first started doing a couple street scenes last November. They were more simplified, 3 colors, worked on those very limited time. So now what I'm doing is I'm jumping back into these landscapes, these streetscapes again, and developing them a lot farther, so that they're taking a lot longer to do, trying to work that light contrast to draw the eye down into that focal point in the distance, and also working at the same time on the composition, so there's something interesting in these paintings rather that's very unique. So these 2 scenes you've seen behind me are based on some photographs, but the buildings are changed, the streets are changed. There's some elements that may be taken from my reference material, but for the most part, these are all unique. And my purpose for doing these, I'm doing a number of them at right now, to try and really understand how to take light and create these dramatic effects with it. Another thing that I haven't talked about is I also love to plein air paint. That's outdoors on site. Uh, because when you paint outdoors, there's so much more color. There's so much more. It's not just values that you see in a photograph, but within those values, there's more different kind of colors that the photograph loses. In the shadow areas, for sure, you'll see outdoors that there is lots of color, lots of depth in these shadow areas. When you look at the same photograph, that's not there. So I strive to get outside and paint plein air or do still life as well, to teach myself how to see better. So that's one of my goals. I just don't, I seem to be really busy, don't have as much time as I would like to get outdoors to do that. My palette that I use, if we start something simple, like if I go out plein air painting, I will use maybe I will use a limited palette outside, like a warm and cool yellow, just a cad orange, a cad red, and two blues, maybe an ultramarine blue and a manganese blue hue, and a titanium white. And those are the basic colors I will use outdoor painting, and I'll create all my colors from that. I find that trying to create the colors from a limited palette is good, rather than using too many colors that are already set. Just because if I'm using the same limited colors to learn from, to create colors, I can recreate those same colors. But what I've been doing lately is I'm introducing a few more transparent colors into this mix. So I'll be using a burnt sienna, the Holbein transparent dark brown. That's one of my favorites right now, because it has a wide range of when it's really pure to when it's really thin, of dark to light and warmth that it can put into any scene. So my palette is limited that way. Even these paintings you see behind me, it's pretty much those basic colors as well. Same group of colors.
You work with both palette knife and brushes.
Yes, I do. Most of my landscape work is done almost exclusively with brushes. There are a few pieces where I have done palette knife on them, but most of my bigger pieces are all brushwork. Now these street scenes that you see behind me and are all palette knife with a tiny bit of brushwork in there at certain points, maybe highlights and stuff like that. And there's a reason for that, because when I use palette knife, because I'm still learning on this, I trying to control how much paint I use on the palette knife, and I'm getting more. It's getting easier for me to use more paint on a palette knife, where if I use a brush and I use more paint, I find it more difficult to accomplish where I'm going. So with a brush, I tend to paint very, very thin in layers, almost glazing, and that's one of the things that's happening with the process of my art, as time's gone by, where in the beginning 3 years ago, I would have worked on a painting and try to knock it off in a week by spending a lot of hours on it. What I'm finding is I'm more efficient now by taking a lot longer to create a painting, where these paintings will take a month or 2 months to do, because I take it to a certain stage, you working wet on wet with a brush to a certain point, and then stopping and then letting that oil layer dry, then coming back again, sometimes restating those same colors, working the wet on wet further, sometimes almost glazing over it and getting more into smaller shapes and values. So the process is always changing, but for me, the palette stays the same. It's just the way my techniques are evolving, just because I'm I'm getting aha moments all the time when I'm painting. That aha, that's how you do this. That's how you do that. And then I try to immediately follow those up onto next painting. Try to use some of those things that I'm learning. With the street paintings, I'm doing a number of series right now because they are very tough for me to do. But as I'm working through these, they're becoming, I'm just understanding what it is I'm trying to do, and I'm understanding what works. So I'm trying to purposely change the color, the feel of these street paintings to try and understand how to get that effect and feel I want through the use of using a palette knife on these kind of scenes.
I see a lot of shadows and reflections in your art, like this one behind you during the rain.
Yeah. And that is one of the key things. That's what I like about these street scenes is understanding how to develop the striking contrast of where the sky meets the street into distance. And as you work to the foreground, those values change from in the foreground, even in the shadow planes, there's more stronger color in the shadow planes. That the reflections are also, that's a process by, again, working the values over time, sort of letting that it sit and then re-striking it again 3 or 4 days later once that bottom layer's partially dry. Sometimes it's almost a dry brush, but it's not really dry brush because I'm using a palette knife. I'm sort of scraping that on and then trying to get building that up slowly. It's not just done in one shot. It's done in multiple layers with the palette knife, which is quite interesting because I never knew how to do that a month ago or a couple months ago. So it's an interesting process.
They look very realistic. So how does this work? Do you go and take pictures, study them?
That's exactly what it is. I take photos. I have friends' photos. I look at reference photos, and what I'm trying to do is then I study other artists who do this. I study many artists. If I see a street scene, just as I'm going through on Google looking and Facebook and Instagram, and I see stuff, I capture those images. I capture them and I study them, and I use them as reference. I don't copy them, but I look at them and I go, how did they? What is it I like about these images? Why did they grab me? Why did they strike me? So I try to grab some of the elements that I see in that by how they put darks against lights, how they used certain lines, how they used broken edges. You'll see, I don't know if you can see it on these paintings, especially the one to my left behind me. The lines on the vertical lines of the skyscrapers I break in those, whereas the lines that go diagonal to that point of in the center of the painting, some of those are unbroken lines to pull the eye down. So I'm sort of understanding different techniques that are the artists you to draw your eye where they want it to go. So it's, trying to figure out how to use these hard edges and broken edges and stuff like that. It's a learning process. I study other artists and I take what I see that I think I'm understanding from their work to put it into my work.
The one behind you on the floor, I'm seeing some close-ups, and it's also a bit of a
the one on the floor to my right is actually another street scene that I'm working on. It's in an early stage, so that one will tend, but when it's done, it will have the look of the other two that are up top. But that's an early stage. That's like the underpainting stage. And you notice the sky in the first one is a blue sky. The one to my left is a more pinky sky. This one down on the floor is even get a pinky or orangier type of a skyline. So what I'm trying to do when I'm working these is trying to see how do I get that feel of that sky to come through into the foreground. How does it bounce off the buildings? How does it bounce off the road? What does that do to the reflections? So again, how do I understand that when I don't have a photographic reference to work from? That is that scene, because that scene is made up. I again search out other artists that have used light in this manner and try to understand how the light works with the color values and what the warmth and the cool of that. So it's a learning process, but each painting ends up being very unique. And one of the things I make sure I do is I step away from these paintings. That one on the bottom it's been really difficult for me, trying to get those colors to do what I want them to do, but it's getting closer and closer. And I'm just going to keep working at it until I understand how to get the values through that painting from the distance to the foreground, so they work as far as the values go, and as far as how it goes, it'll go from cool to warm, and warmer in the front, cooler in the back, even though it's that foggy, muted look in the background.
Oil is a hard medium. It takes longer to dry. How do you make corrections? How do you work with it?
That is and that's a funny one to say, because earlier on when I was working with oils, and plein air painting was a difficult one, because as I work the oil and try to get to a finished state, I know what colors I'm trying to put in there. I know where I want to take it, but as I'm using wet oil on top of wet oil, eventually I end up with too much paint there. And too much paint, you can't make it lighter, you can't make it darker, it ends up turning muddy. So the learning process of that is being able to keep the shapes separated, and then working it with thinner layers to start, maybe thicker layers as you go. With these scenes here, they're wet on wet. Again, I work my colors like that. I put almost a pure color down to start with, and then I while it's still wet, I work the neutral colors in to push the value back and push it into the cool zone. And in the foregrounds, like, I'll do the opposite. Sometimes I'll start with a bolder bright red color, or a brighter warmer color, and then neutralize it. But what I do with the with these is I always wait. Like with oils, I'll only take it so far, and that's what I've learned, is that I'm a more efficient painter if I only block in these, get them the values moving in the direction I want. The paint's maybe getting thick, just stop. I just stop and say, leave it. I'm going to go work on another one. I'll come back to this one in about 3 or 4 days. Because when I come back, that is sort of set. And then I rework those values into large shapes over and over, and do that for multiple days, so for a couple of weeks. When the values tend to, in large shapes, tend to set themselves up so you can actually see depth in it. You squint at it, you can actually see no detail, because when you squint, you lose all the detail, but you can see that streak go disappearing into the distance. That's when I know I'm fine to start working in some of the details, breaking those shapes up into smaller shapes. What I find is if I set those values up, distance, midground, foreground, earlier on, once I start breaking them up to shape into smaller shapes, if I go too bright or too dark or too warm or too cool within those shapes, it shows up immediately. So it helps control how quickly I can set the shapes up within each one of those areas or planes. Typically, I do shows around a Calgary area. That's where I'm based, in Calgary, and I try to do probably 4 to 5 art shows a year. The shows I like best is where the shows run for a number of days, where I can be present in the show with my art. As people have questions, I can explain the art. I can explain my process if they want to know that. Art shows are quite interesting. I really like meeting the people at the art shows, and other artists. And that's the other thing that is really nice, is just being with other artists, with other work. You learn a lot from other artists and seeing what they do. But the biggest show I do in Calgary is the Calgary Exhibition Stampede. I've done that in 2019 again, 2021, just a number of weeks ago. And that show is it's a really fantastic show and experience. Set up in a booth there, show that runs for 11 days, and have a lot of art out there. And with being able to engage with as many clients as come through there is quite the experience.
You have done a lot of stampede paintings. Would you like to tell, because we are Calgary and it's
Right.
Western Canada. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Right. So when with the Calgary Stampede, you see behind me right now, because I'm working on these street scenes. That's just what I'm doing now. I'm trying to get 4 or 5 of these completed up for gallery. So those ones you see behind me are going into a gallery here at Calgary in August. But for the Calgary Stampede, because that show is a Western theme, I brought my Western theme paintings out there. And by Western theme, I mean landscapes from out around Alberta. I do a lot of animals. I particularly like buffalo, bison, and I really like painting large paintings of bison in landscapes. And at the Stampede, I had a number of those type of paintings. I also had some other animals, bears, bear cubs, polar bears even at the Stampede, but different kind of art that was all more local feel to it, with local landscapes and local wildlife. Even I had one painting there, which was one of the chuck wagons, because this year it was a 36 by 72 motion image of a chuck wagon, and that image was quite well received this year because of the fact that the chuck wagons with COVID, they didn't run the chuck wagons at the Calgary Stampede this year due to the fact that they felt that the horses and the riders didn't have enough time to get the animals prepared for that kind of endurance. They didn't want to have a risk hurting any of the horses. At least that's my understanding of why the chuck wagons didn't go. But I had the chuck wagons in my booth, so if anybody wanted to see chuck wagons, I had them there to see. And that was quite a nice piece to have at the show. I also did some big scenes of Alberta bison. With with the sunset breaking over the mountains, and scenes like that, big landscapes, grand. So it was a good show. Really nice to share these kind of pieces.
On your website, you are saying that you're doing prints of your work, and your people can order them from you.
Yes, now that's the print. The print option is something else that is in the works, and it's a bit changing right now. So rather than printmaking is a different kind of a business in itself, because to create a number of prints and then have them in stock to sell them is it takes a lot of time. It's a huge process, and then you have to have an avenue to get the prints out, distribute them, and get them shown, and that. So what I've done is I've just set up with a company called Art Magic, and they will be printing my prints on demand as requested by clients, and in the process of making that option available on the website. So if someone sees a print that an image they like on the website, they will be able to click on the link, and that link will take them right to the order process to purchase the prints. So that is still in the works. I don't have any of the links on the website yet, the direct links, but that's coming in. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, that will be an option. And not all prints are going to be available. Not all images are going to be available as prints, but the more popular ones for sure will be available.
I was wondering, when we say plein air, we mean we go outside in nature and paint.
Yeah.
Can you plein air in the city?
You can plein air. I plein air in the mountains. I like that a lot. I do in the city. We have Fish Creek is a big provincial park in Calgary, and I quite often go down there and do plein air painting along the creek. There's a lot of artists that do plein air painting in Calgary, all over. They'll go down just local streets, back alleys, anywhere. You can paint anywhere, plein air. It's just, and we're fortunate in Calgary that if you are a plein air painter, you can set up almost anywhere without a problem to plein air paint. Just pick a bench or a corner and start painting. I'd like to do more of that, but my goal is to keep keep doing the plein air painting, because it's hard work. It's mentally hard, I find, but the result is learning colors. And I think that my thinking of plein air painting is one of the huge advantages of plein air painting is when one paints outdoors and they see these colors that are in nature, being spring, summer, fall, they're always different at the same location. Morning, night, they're different at the same location. Overcast days, I mean, even throughout the day, they can change. So the more one paints in those circumstances, even at the same location over and over and over again, one will learn what the underlying colors, the underlying values are in certain areas that get lost in photographs. So my belief is that over time, I'm talking years for me, because I'm a relatively new painter. But if over time, if I did enough plein air painting, that once I revert back to photographs that are similar to plein air paintings I've done before, I'll be able to fill in the blanks from a photograph based on my learned knowledge of what colors exist in those shadows that the camera's not picking up. So that's why I think plein air painting is a really important aspect of learning to paint and being able to see colors if one wants to get that kind of feel and look to their paintings.
I'd like to talk a little bit about the seasons.
Right.
Winter is quite long in Calgary. So how do you balance this outdoors work?
That's funny, because last year I said I was going to go out and paint plein air in the winter time, and I never did once. It's one of those things that you can't paint plein air, but as long as it's not bitterly cold, I think there's a lot of artists, friends of mine in Calgary, that are wonderful, super talented plein air painters, probably way much better than I am. And when they go out, they do go out year round in the winter. They just dress for it, wear gloves, take breaks. Sometimes they paint from their vehicles where it's warm, if the wind's too much and bitter. But you can paint plein air all year round here. You just have to be prepared for the elements. There's certain times, of course, when it's minus 25 degrees out. I don't know of anybody that paints outdoors when it's that cold. It would be really hard and difficult to do. And even when it rains, some artists even have little tent shelters that they can paint in the rain. They can stand inside these little mini tents and paint. But for the most part, plein air painting is limited to spring, summer, and fall. With the diehards, painters will step out on the warmer winter days when it's around -5 and above.
When you go into the nature, do you take precautions because there's lots of bears?
Yes, that's always my worry, is when I go out outdoors and hiking. I've done it alone a number of times. I don't really. I grew up in Kimberley in BC, and where we had bears around our property all the time growing up. And I lived at the edge of the town, so as we walked home, there was always risks of running into bears. And sometimes we'd walk up the street, and we had a big property at the end of our street with forests almost on all three sides of it. And sometimes you would get into the house and realize there was a bear outside. But I found that the black bears were not of concern. We didn't have grizzlies at that time in the area. And what I find now is there's more grizzly bears in the outdoors here in the Kananaskis and parks than there were probably 20, 30 years ago. At least that's my perception. So they make me nervous. Black bears don't make me nervous, but grizzly bears do. So when I go out, I've always sort of selected trails and areas where there is people. It's a popular place for people to be walking up and down, and hikers to come and go on. I believe that the bears tend to, though they're there, you can see the evidence of them being through. They tend to stay away from the people because they know the people are there. So best practice is to take bear spray, of course, and to go up with a partner, somebody who will don't go alone unless it's midday when there's other hikers on the trail.
You have made such a major transition from technology to art. What was your guiding philosophy?
You know, I think that in technology, growing up as a child, I was a doodler on my notebooks. My notebooks were filled with drawings. Some of the covers were completely covered with almost nothing but drawings on the front covers. The interior, many of my books were drawings all the way down the sides, the columns on every page throughout the books. Because when I was bored in class, I doodled. I just drew all the time. All the time. I think that is part of it. When I went to college and became an electronic engineering technologist, there was a lot of the technical part of my career for 25 years, fixing banking machines, taking them apart. There is something similar in that when I look in the paintings that are behind me, those forms that go back off into the distance and those lines, in my mind, they're the same thing as the structures of banking machines, where you know all these parts have to line up perfectly to create the function of the machine. And I look at these paintings, the lines of that perspective have to line up perfectly, or seem to appear to line up perfectly in order to create that same working product. So I don't think it's a leap to jump from where I was before to where I am now, because that interest was always there. Part of my work when I was as an electronic technologist, we often brought in equipment into Canada that didn't work properly for Canadian coin and currency, just because of our stuff was different. And I would often take the machines apart, modify them, grind things down, change things, add stuff to them to get them to working. And then I would do drawings up, three-dimensional drawings. And then I would actually be asked to go across Canada to our other branches and teach the other technicians how to make these modifications to the machines in their area using the drawings that I drew up. So there's always this drawing aspect of perception and perspective. So the transition to oil painting for me was the challenge was understanding oils. I didn't have to learn perspective because I was always drawing with perspective my whole life. That's one of the things, to be able to be able to draw, to be able to paint in detail. Perspective has to be accurate. If you can't put accurate perspective in, you can't draw a realistic painting. It just won't be realistic. So there's a balance between how accurate perspective has to be and how accurate your detail has to be to get a painting to be cohesive. So fortunately, perspective has never been an issue with me. Just understanding how oil is and how oil behaves, how to let oil do what oil wants to do.
How do people find you? How do you connect with your public?
That's very interesting because I've been painting full time for 3 years now, just over 3.5 years, and trying to build an audience, a client list, followers. I have no idea how to do that because I'm not a marketing person. So what I'm doing is I'm just trying to be present, do the number of art shows. I am on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and right now the way I manage that, as far as to have an audience, is to try to constantly put information forward about my art, what I'm doing, and stuff like that. Just make sure that there's something I have to offer to the people on there. And then I share to groups through Instagram and Facebook. And so I spend a lot of time on social media looking at my posts and how they're responded to, looking at other people's posts, and just trying to make sure that my Instagram and Facebook pages are current and they're up to date and they're active and they have got people following and liking. So it's sort of almost for me, it's like a circle that I'm slowly building followers up as I introduce new art on there, and what I'm finding is that I'm offering up things like sometimes I'll put on my Facebook and Instagram pages the process. I'll do an early version of the painting when it's in a process. People really like to see that. They like to see the process and the steps that go on into making to creating the payment. These paintings. These are other artists. These are just people who like art. It's anybody that like to see that. So that's how I've been working my growth right now. I haven't really approached too many galleries at this point. I do have these ones here going into a gallery. My growth is slow. One of the things I want to do is try to get my art to a certain level where it's consistent. And I think I'm getting there now, where I'm at now with a lot of the work. The consistency is there, the quality is there, and I'm finding a lot of people are. I'm gauging more and more people all the time with the art. So where I go from here is another story. I'm working on a number of things, redeveloping the website, and learning other ways to market. So it's a learning process for me that probably will continue for a long time.
We are in the second half of the year. What does it look like for you?
The interesting part for me, COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of artists, me included as well. With the onset of COVID, it seemed like at the beginning I had some steady sales. Every month I have sales going on, but then things stopped as soon as COVID hit. So when that happened in last year in 2020, through the months of June, July, August, September, I just said I'm just going to go plein air painting. Because there was no shows to do, there was no to do paintings in my workshop to build an inventory. I said there's no point in doing that. Let me educate myself better. Let me do a lot of plein air painting. So that's what I did last year. And then once fall came, I said, okay, look like shows are opening up, and I did my very first home show in my home, and I opened up my studio and sold a number of paintings. So what happened? There was a big transition for me in the fall of 2020. Is that I got commission requests, and I never had many commission requests. I've had a few, but never many. And then as we went into January and February and March, commission requests, and these are from people who maybe only bought a small 9x12 from me, and then they bought another 11x14. Now they're commissioning some bigger pieces, and I think that's because of they follow me. They purchase a piece of art. They know what they're getting. They know what it looks like, and so what's come out of it is a lot of commissions. So I have commissions artwork from a number of clients right now that are going to keep me busy probably till the end of October. I think I got 4 or 5 on the go right now, and there's one, possibly 2 more coming down the road. So this is actually a good thing to have that. It was unexpected, but it's been steady. So I don't. It's for me, it's interesting because I never saw myself a year and a half ago as doing a lot of commissions, but I enjoy commissions because quite often the commissions are, I take them on because they're challenging. Because one of the things I always, and I tell other people this, I tell other artists this, is whenever I paint any painting I paint, I don't paint it to reproduce the same thing I just painted yesterday or the day before or last week. There has to be a challenging element to it. So if I get a commission to paint a painting that somebody saw, see the one on my right with the yellow taxi, and somebody says, "Oh, I love it." I go, "Well, that's sold. Can you do me one like that?" Well, I can't. But the challenge now is not to paint another one like that. It's to paint another one that has a feel like that, that's different. So taken commissions on, a lot of portrait work I'm doing, which is really difficult for me, but that's why I do it. Is because how I'm not handing over an unfinished a piece of work that I'm not happy with. So I take these commissions, and some commissions I take purposely because they are difficult. I have to learn how to do this. So it's a learning process, and it's really nice to be able to take on a commission and get paid, and then put the effort in to learn. So I'm getting paid to learn. At the same time, I'm being able to produce a product that a client can take home and be very, very happy with.
You said that you have to do pieces that feel in a certain way. So what's it like to put your soul, into your painting? Do you feel depleted?
That's the interesting thing is, when I first started painting, is I was worried that when I completed the painting and I was really, really happy with it, would I be able to sell it? Would I be able to, not sell it, would I be able to sell it, but would I be able to let it go if somebody wanted to buy it? And that concerned me at the beginning, because I thought I would be attached to my paintings. So what I'm attached to, I find, is the process of painting. Like creating these scenes behind you, the process of doing this, as I get near the end, it's so exciting inside me. It just burns inside me. I want to jump back into that painting, but I have to be patient, because I can't. I gotta let them sit in stages. But there's this desire and this love of, I want to get back into this painting. That's the thrill for me. And then when I get it to that point where I go, I can't do anymore. I think there's nothing more. I can do more, but there's nothing more I should be doing to this painting. That's the best part, because I know the painting's done. Even at that point, I usually let it sit for three more or four, maybe a week, to see if there's any final touches. But that's the thrilling part, and it's my favorite painting. Every time I finish a painting, it's my favorite painting. Then when I move on to the next one, somewhere in that process, as I move on to the next one, it gets to a certain stage, that favorite painting now sort of fades in the back. I'm ready to let it go. All my interest now is in this new painting, and then again, you get this rush of as that painting develops. So there is a passion at one point that is deep. As I get near the end of every painting, that I love what I'm seeing, and that's the thrill. That's the thrill of creating a painting. Is just that seeing it come to at the end.
Do you do abstract painting?
No, I haven't. I know I do like abstracts, but I have not done any abstracts. There's a reason for that. Is because the abstracts I like done by other painters, I don't quite understand what it is I like about them. But I think it has to do with I think what has to do with how they handle the overall colors and values throughout the painting that make them work with each other. So when you look at these paintings behind me here, these street ones that are palette line, they're like an abstract realism. They're not super realism, but they look like it, but they're not. They're more abstracted than my brushwork. I could see myself taking these and abstracting these kind of things, where because of the colors that are in these, in the values in these, do more an abstract art that is, you might see a scene in it, but not abstract, just throwing paint across that's splashing and stuff. I don't see that kind of a work in my future. It might be, but not now.
What keeps you going?
I think right now, for me, there is so many images that I collected from other artists, from other friends, from other people that I see on Facebook and Instagram. A lot of my artwork that I use reference photos for everything I paint, unless I'm painting plein air or still life. But I use reference photos, and when I see a photo or an image online. Just, I don't know who posted, somebody else posted, or it's a friend of a friend, or whatever it comes from. If I think that'll make a great painting, I track them down and I talk to them and see if they would, give me permission to use that image as a reference. In most cases, the whoever took the photo was quite impressed that their photo was worthy of making a painting out of. So I've got a huge collection of images that I can paint. So I'll never tire. I will never be short of material. It's almost overwhelming if I look at the number of paintings that I'd like to be able to create. A lot of them I can't because I'm not good enough yet in certain areas, but there is so much material there to paint, and it's all different. So the process of tackling a new image, like doing these street scenes right now, something I didn't do a year ago, especially at this level, that's what interests me, is because I'm learning from it. And why can't I do that? Why can I do these now when I couldn't do it a year ago? Because over the last year, trying to push myself to do new paintings that were out of my comfort zone and working my way through them, I learned things, and some of those elements and fundamental skills can be transferred over into these kind of paintings that make these ones work. So the learning process, trying to figure out how some of these other artists can create what they create, so that looks so simple. It's not simple, but they make it look simple. That's where I want to go. So to strive to get to a certain level is what keeps me going, and the thrill to be able to create pieces with the skill set I have now, pieces that work, and pieces that people want to take home. That's a big thrill.